Chris, we're not only going to shut down the government for weeks on end, we're going to crash the entire international economy in order to save the medical device manufacturers.
They got it hard. Those pacemakers are important.
Exactly.
They are.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Happy Friday. All right. This is going to be kind of a fun show. This is going to be one of those shows where something might go terrifically, technically wrong, in which case it might even be more fun than if it works. I'm just warning you. All right. Today in our nation's capital, it rained. Wah, wah. Dreary morning commute in the D.C. area today. Because it was raining hard at times this morning, that meant the rainy morning commute around the Beltway from Virginia and Maryland into the D.C. area, it went at a rather dreary, rainy morning commute speed. But today was special. Today was also supposed to be the day of the massive Freedom Truckers protest ride, where they were going to bring Washington to its knees with a massive convoy-style protest that was going to shut down the Washington Beltway. Remember that movie, Convoy, from 1978? I loved that movie. The conservative TV network, the Fox News Channel, has been hyping the trucker protest all week this week. The trucker protest organizers said they expected thousands of truckers to take part today. One radio host who was helping to hype the trucker protest in the conservative media said he thought that if 3,000 truckers turned out, that would inspire a nationwide general strike of 100 million Americans to, quote, get out on the street, get out on the roads, and demand that our legislature follow the Constitution. That did not happen. Just a few guys showed up, and they have not yet inspired a general strike of 100 million Americans. The Virginia State Police spokesperson said today, quote, it was pretty much a non-event. The Maryland State Highway Administration said the same thing. Their spokesperson told the Washington Post, quote, nothing materialized. So basically, it was a rainy day commute. Maryland says there were a few accidents on the outer loop of the Beltway around College Park, but those are because of the rain, not the truckers. That said, though, the truckers' protest got so much hype, particularly in the conservative media, that I think a lot of people in local news felt like even though it didn't really turn out to be much of anything, it's been hyped so much they had to go cover it. They had to at least go cover the few guys who showed up.
They started early this morning. They say they plan to go through the weekend here. And what they're basically doing is just driving over the minimum speed limit so that they're not cited for impeding traffic. It's their way of demonstrating against the Obama administration and Congress, not because of the budget impasse, but for a variety of grievances.
There ain't nobody wants anything, violent to happen or any, everybody's talking about, oh, we need a civil war, we need a revolution and stuff like that. We need a peaceful revolution is what we need.
Everybody knows about the Crosby, Stills, Nash song, the 4 dead in Ohio. Well, how about the 4 dead in Benghazi?
Stay out of our health care. Let the doctors handle that. Don't get into things they don't understand.
So you see they have a variety of issues that they're upset about. Mr. Johnson there that you saw was actually cited by Maryland State Police for going 39 miles per hour. Virginia State Police say they've had no issues since early this morning.
Sherry Lee is live in Woodbridge, Virginia, with a closer look now. And Sherry, have you seen many more truckers for the cause this morning?
Well, Allison and Sarah, we have not seen a whole lot of those truckers coming through. We understand that they are now right up around the Beltway area, but given the numbers, they may actually be very easy to miss if you're out there. No impact on traffic so far.
Hey, Maureen, the biggest issue out here has been people driving too fast for these very slick conditions.
So the trucker protest did not turn out to be as exciting as the right was hoping it was going to be. Tomorrow it's supposed to be more rain in the D.C. area. Tomorrow's stunt is supposed to be Glenn Beck picking up trash. The former Fox News host, who now does a thing on the Internet machine, he says he will pick up trash tomorrow at Washington landmarks, along with the Tea Party group. The press release says that the only reason federal monuments and parks are closed during the federal government shutdown is because, quote, the Obama administration has petulantly tried to make the shutdown some political game. They believe that the shutdown of the federal government doesn't actually shut down things run by the federal government, except for the ones that President Obama feels petulant about. And so those are the ones to which they will send Glenn Beck tomorrow to collect trash. This is actually the other press release from the event, which was sent out by the group Freedom Works. It's a little awkward for FreedomWorks specifically to be doing a new event with Glenn Beck right now, trash-related or otherwise, because Rosie Gray at BuzzFeed today just reported on why it is that in this sort of moment of Tea Party glory that we're having as a nation, with the government shut down and the Republicans hurtling the country toward default and hitting the debt ceiling, with the Tea Party know-nothing confrontational politics really bringing the country to its knees in a way they have long fantasized about, FreedomWorks in the middle of all of this has been nowhere to be seen. And it turns out, according to new reporting from BuzzFeed, that's because FreedomWorks is broke. After being founded by the billionaire Koch brothers and raising more than $40 million last year, after firing Dick Armey and being able to afford to give him $8 million to make him go away when they fired him, FreedomWorks now is broke. They reportedly just had to take out a $1 million line of credit in order to try to keep their thing together. $1 million, coincidentally, is also the amount of money that FreedomWorks has just given to Glenn Beck, so that they can be paid corporate sponsors of his internet TV show. They're having to take a loan for $1 million because they have done things like pay Glenn Beck $1 million. But that does buy them the right to appear alongside Glenn Beck at the trash event tomorrow in the rain in Washington, D.C. And you thought your shutdown week was going poorly. I mean, if FreedomWorks really is in the kind of disarray that it seems like they are in right now, that may help to explain the confused messaging from them. I mean, their event tomorrow, the trash event, the Glenn Beck trash event, is essentially to say that they are all for the shutdown. They've been advocating for the shutdown all this time. They're all for the shutdown. They're not against the shutdown at all, but they are outraged by the shutdown. It's confusing, right? It's a very confusing message. FreedomWorks and Glenn Beck picking up trash is a confusing thing. But it's not just them being confusing right now. As we head into the second weekend of the government shutdown, the messages from other right-wing groups who are even more central to this fight are getting more confusing as well. If there's one group that's been right out in front of the get rid of Obamacare at all costs caucus, that, of course, would have to be Heritage Action. They're the group that bought $500,000 in ads against Republican members of Congress to pressure them to take a hard line, to pressure them to shut down the government as a way of trying to defund Obamacare. And Heritage Action comes into this fight with a long history of advocating against raising the debt ceiling. They've called raising the debt ceiling just a non-starter, something that shouldn't even be discussed from the beginning. So Heritage Action, if you're trying to get a grip on their position, they came into this saying, absolutely do not raise the debt ceiling. This is all about Obamacare for us. Pour everything you have into the Obamacare fight and do not raise the debt ceiling. But now, this week, Heritage Action has changed their mind on the debt ceilings part. So instead of don't raise the debt ceiling, now they have decided as of this week, please do raise the debt ceiling. Heritage Action announced this week that they're actually just fine with raising the debt ceiling because it's still all about Obamacare for them, and that will somehow help them get rid of Obamacare. So this is Heritage Foundation. Don't raise the debt ceiling. Now, please do raise the debt ceiling, but for them, it's all about Obamacare. Next up, in terms of influence, probably the Club for Growth. The Grover Norquist anti-tax conservative group, they also had a change of heart this week. The Club for Growth used to be all about refusing to raise the debt ceiling. For them, it's not about Obamacare. It's about all sorts of other stuff. But their message all along has been, do not raise the debt ceiling. This week, though, the Club for Growth also announced that it will look away if Republicans do decide to raise the debt ceiling. So it's still not about Obamacare for them, but now their new message is, please do increase it. We want lots of non-Obamacare related things, but don't hit the debt ceiling on our account. So that was how their message changed this week. Now, the Koch brothers funded Americans for Prosperity group, they get points for consistency in their devotion to hardcore shutting everything down. They want the government shut down. They do not want to raise the debt ceiling. They want none of that. So for them, it is not particularly about Obamacare. So it's not really about Obamacare for them. It's for all sorts of other things. But they are definitely willing to hit the debt ceiling for all the other stuff they want. So that's AFP. At least they have stayed the same. They're funded, though, by the Koch brothers, right? And the Koch brothers, they have been funding not just AFP, but they've been funding to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, basically all of the groups that have been demanding a government shutdown as a way of trying to kill Obamacare. They funded all of these groups. They funded Heritage Action. They funded AFP. They funded all the Tea Party groups. All of these groups that have been demanding a government shutdown as a way of trying to kill Obamacare. Shut down the government, right? Shut down the government. It's all about Obamacare. They've spent over $200 million in a year on these groups that have been pushing for a government shutdown over Obamacare. But this week, they changed their mind and decided, actually, they do not want a government shutdown anymore. Please do not shut down the government over Obamacare. They wrote a nice letter to the Senate saying, we never really meant that. We take it all back. They wrote a letter to the Senate saying, yes, we still sure hate Obamacare, but whatever made you think that we want a government shutdown? Just because we spent over $200 million trying to get that. In terms of the actual Republicans inside Congress, it's the freshman House Republican Mark Meadows from North Carolina, who you'll recall, wrote the initial letter demanding the shutdown, wrote the letter to John Boehner, right? He rallied 80 other House Republicans to demand the shutdown over Obamacare in the first place. So Mark Meadows is staying firm right now as of wanting the shutdown. He's the guy who asked for it in the first place. But now he has an interesting change of heart because he still wants to shut down the government. But for him, it was all about Obamacare. Now he says it is no longer about Obamacare. Congressman Meadows said this week, after he got the shutdown that he wanted, that for him, it's no longer about Obamacare anymore. That seems to also be sort of where the House Republican leadership is. They still want the shutdown. It used to be about Obamacare for them. Now they say it's not about Obamacare. They're not even negotiating about that anymore. They're still trying to figure out what it is about now. On the debt ceiling part of it, though, John Boehner's whole idea all year long was that he didn't want to fight about a shutdown. He wanted to fight about the debt ceiling. He wanted to not raise the debt ceiling without a big ransom paid by the Democrats and the president on all sorts of things. So he didn't care about Obamacare specifically. So it's not about Obamacare, right? But there was all sorts of specific stuff that he wanted to get for the debt ceiling. Maybe even not specific stuff, just other stuff. He wanted to get something, but he didn't want to raise the debt ceiling. That's where he thought he had the most leverage. That's been pretty much his position all year. Well, now in his second week of getting crushed in the polls and making no progress toward anything that he purports to want, for John Boehner, it is still not about Obamacare. But John Boehner's new idea is, well, maybe just for a few days, let's raise the debt ceiling. We could just do it for a couple days, couple weeks, then you could give me some of what I want, maybe? Good plan? And that brings us to the Senate Republicans, who met today with President Obama. They completely reject what the House Republicans are saying. For them, it is not about Obamacare. They say, we're never going to defund Obamacare. Why are we even fighting about that? But they do not want to raise the debt ceiling, not even for just a few days without some concessions. So same goes for them for the government shutdown. The only way they want the government reopened, the only way they want the debt ceiling raised is if they get their other demands met. So it's not about Obamacare for them. They need something, but they are willing to open up the government. So can you keep track of all that? I mean, one by one, if you're the kind of Republican in Congress, God bless you, who likes to or needs to take cues from right-wing activist groups, or even if you're just looking for cues from your colleagues in Congress, it is hard to imagine what those cues are telling you to do right now, all those contradictory instructions. Right? It's hard to imagine if you're a Republican in Congress. But even without the Republicans, pity the poor Democrats. Pity the White House, right? Trying to figure out what it is that the other side wants. If you're from the outside looking in at the right now, trying to figure out what they want, this is our summary of their demands as best as we can figure them out right now. This is what they are saying they want. And this is just the mainstream stuff. This isn't even going to the fringy groups like the trucker who says he wants to drive around the Washington Beltway all weekend because of Benghazi. This is not including like Michelle Bachmann, for example, who said this week in Congress that she is legislating right now in order to get America well positioned for the apocalypse because we have now entered the end times. This is just the current or recently stated positions of Republican congressional leadership and the main conservative interest groups that Republicans are listening to right now in Washington. This is a collection of what they want. This is what they say is important to them. This is why the government is shut down for 11 days and counting now, and why we are hurtling toward hitting the debt ceiling and the attendant prospect of catastrophic international unprecedented economic conflagration because of this very clear message. The big idea in Republican politics for the past few years is the collapse of internal organization in that party, right? I mean, TV networks and talk radio guys and rich billionaires who are willing to spend on campaigns and on activism, they can get Republican members of Congress to jump much more than their own ostensible party leadership can. And because of that, there's no real leadership inside the party, right? There's no internal coherence to what they're doing. And that makes for messages so mixed that it is sometimes a hilarious exercise to try to figure out what they are saying. And it is hilarious that this is their purported message right now, right? It is hilarious, except for the fact that this mess is what House Republicans are trying to read right now as their instruction manual, their detailed instruction manual for reopening the federal government and avoiding a catastrophic default disaster that would crash the world economy and destroy the dollar for a generation or more. They're looking for a way out of this mess by reading what this crowd is telling them to do. Good luck to us all.